welcome to ENT New Broadcast. For today's sections, we will encounter with Indian culture communications. Let's dive in with interesting information collected by our reporters, Evin, Tessa, and Jermaine.
Our first story tonight deals with the Bollywoodization of popular Indian visual culture. The contemporary Indian visual culture can be seen through the Bollywood industry. There are diverse genres and styles of film in the industry that are made in different languages to suit many tribes. However, Bollywood has a major impact on the culture and is mainstream in the film industry. Over time, Bollywood has expanded and dominated into other mediums in India, such as the press, television, radio, music, and advertising. The meaning of Bollywood originated from film critics in Bombay during the 1970s to 1980s. Later on, this term became more popular in Indian cinema. This film industry continues to grow in popularity as the internet keeps rising, yet still maintains the roots of Indian culture, traditions of the past, such as when it first started in a basement located in Paris, capturing the streets, festivals, and wrestling matches. Hindu mythology is the major influence on the Indian movies. Directors and writers set the theme of Bollywood movies mostly from the middle class. Therefore, they apply visual power to emphasize and empower their wealthy. Weddings are one of the scenes that highlight signs of wealth. However, the Bollywood film industry is struggling to deliver messages and open people's minds in domestic, especially rural areas where it is still feudatory. In the genre of experimental movies, some have succeeded in the domestic market but failed to make an impact on the Indian diaspora. In a contradiction, Bollywood is now focusing on the domestic market as their target audience, specifically the middle class, since they have been unsuccessful in the global market. Our second story covers how patriarchal socialization influences rape-related reporting and the study of the 2012 Delhi gang rape case at the center of it all. The study found that since Indian culture disparages women and journalists are socialized in this environment, they end up creating content that lessens the effects of sexual assault and rape on women. Furthermore, it was acknowledged that many journalists know of this, and female reporters are being harassed because of it. Fortunately, reporters were given a chance to cover new story angles because of the case. Humanizing rape victims was one of them, which isn't normally possible since India likes to shame them. The study also discloses that female journalists were mainly the ones who covered the new angles, while male reporters stuck to the norm. Now on to Jermaine for our next stories.
Thank you so much, Tessa, for those great stories and passing it over to me. My name is Jermaine Turner, and today I want to talk to you about two very important topics and issues going on right now in Indian communication. And the first thing is argument disputes in India and how they compare to American disputes. And I'm also going to talk to you about Indian arranged marriages and the communication that is had to help set those up in Indian culture. So the first thing is I want to talk to you about a study that was done by Del Hampel and Depa Agidela. They did a study to see how argument disputes are handled in India as it correlates to American arguments and disputes. And it found that in Indian culture, majority of the time, women are sought out more to be the more serious person in disputes as the man isn't. But in American culture, men are seen to be more serious when it comes to arguments and depending on what they are. It also showed that even though India is a very collective culture as a whole, usually arguments are very individualistic, and it's very much so about the person's opinion and how they feel about a particular issue with facts, and it might be due to civil discourse or due to a disagreement in business. But in American culture, even though we are a very individualistic country, we do have most of the time collective thoughts around idea or norm, and this is seen in the political atmosphere, this is seen in our health and medical field, and this is seen even in a global pandemic about our many different views. And it also showed that Indian men, younger men, took things more lightly, while Indian women were more serious and took a more serious approach. And it also, in general, all depends on age and gender when it comes to arguing, and that's what they both have in common. And so that was a very interesting study done and survey. The next thing I'm going to move on to is talk to you about Indian arranged marriages and how those work in the communication between those. So to be quite interesting, in America, if you are interested in dating a person or a spouse or having a partner, you usually go out on your own, you search for that person, you approach them or they might approach you, and then you start a relationship, and then you move on, you get married, have a family, and move forward. Well, in Indian culture, it works very differently. Most of the marriages are arranged. Near about 60% of the marriages are arranged due to the culture and beliefs, but it all depends on your specific religion and the norms that have been set in your community. So it just really depends on that. But in most Indian cultures, one thing that they do consist of is the communication barriers, and that is the bride's father and the groomsman father are the ones that handle negotiations and contracts, per se, of this arranged marriage. And from there, they will go on to introduce them to each other and navigate the steps of the engagement party and the rituals that will be done and how they will move forward in the marriage. And these arranged marriages usually work. It shows that Indian couples are still happy. They marry longer than American cultures, which is shocking, but which is not shocking. But arranged marriages works, and it works for their culture and their norms. And the communication, like I said, is done mostly by men. And even in Indian culture, in general, from my research, has shown that men in India usually do take up on the more serious side when it comes to, financial things or marriages or anything religious related. Men seem to be the more barrier of those things in discussion. So that's all I have for you today. And now I'm going to pass it on to the next reporter for the next story.
Thanks, Jermaine, for passing it over to me. I'm Evin Temple, and I'm going to bring you the last section of our UNT News broadcast for the day. The first article we'll be talking about today is optimizing communication channels for the inclusive rural development in India. And the second one I'll be telling you about is emerging interpersonal norms of text messaging in India and the United States. The first article focuses on ways to achieve optimal communication for the agricultural sector's growth in India. And it states that using information communication technologies and cheap access to expert information, linguistic and literacy barriers can and will both be solved among farmers. And so thus providing scientific benefits for farmers in crop production. Communicating practically applicable knowledge with the shortest timeline between innovation and extension to the end user is a real challenge between farmers and people that don't farm. And due to the lack of education and awareness of diverse kinds of problems, they also might not be as competent in recognizing their problem or knowing the kind of information that would help in solving it, or even they don't even know where to get help, so that would help them get help. And low literacy levels in language also became barriers in accessing information available in written form or languages other than the place that they're at. The main focus of this article is not only to bring awareness to this issue of these Indian farmers face, but to try to find a solution that they need in order to keep their crops healthy and be able to receive communication not only from the rest of their country, but from the rest of the world. And I think that's a great story. The second one, the emerging interpersonal norms of text messaging in India and the United States. This study conducted at 137 participants, and each was assigned to take logs of text messaging going in and out of their device during a short period of time, which is a good place to do it because India has 1/3 of the cell phone usage on the planet Earth. So that's a big number, and that's a great field to kind of have this study on. So it's important to focus on cultural understandings when talking about text messaging in India because that's where so much data comes from. And the journal states that interpersonal nature of text messaging allows users to respond freely during face-to-face interactions as well. So the possible effects this alone can have on norms is endless, but these cultural norms can be linked to how they interact in a public space. So, though contemporary communication methods in India are shifting to digital, its effects on real-life personal communication practices are still more than ever present. So that's a big thing that we can be looking forward to in our future. So thank you for listening to this last section of UNT News broadcast, and this is me signing off. Thank you.